Hi everyone, welcome to this video where we're going to be going over how to create a new page using the Canvas framework, and that's the goal of this video. But beyond this, what I really hope to teach you, and I hope that you learn, is really understanding the fundamental process of how to plan a page to meet your specific application use case and requirements, and then how we can use Canvas to expedite and speed up this process so that we can build this page faster. So by the end of this video, I hope that you really understand this process of planning a page much better. So let's jump into this video and get into it. So to frame this video and give you a bit more context over what, broadly speaking, we're trying to build today, what we've tried to build so far in the previous videos is a marketplace platform where there are buyers on one side and sellers on another side. And buyers can view listings and products from sellers and purchase these listings. Now, we've already created a sign-up flow where a user can sign up as either a buyer or a seller on our platform. In today's video, we're going to be going over how we're planning just the seller's side of the equation. And to do that, first we're going to start off with some of the seller's requirements. So what do we want the seller to be able to do on our platform? And primarily, there are three things we want a seller to be able to do. So a seller has to be able to update their store information. So maybe that's an About Us page or some order information, but just some information that gives broader context about the seller. The second thing we want them to be able to do is to add new listings or products to their store. And then finally, the third thing we want them to be able to do is to view and manage the existing listings on their page. And that's our application requirements. Now, something I haven't included that's really common to have in this use case is the ability to view and manage orders that a seller receives. And that is something that is definitely able to be completed using Bubble and also using Canvas. But in today's video, I'm not going to be going over exactly how to do that. So now let's jump into the screen and have a look at the planning process behind going from these application requirements to actually choosing the components and the type of components we need to support this. So on the page here, you can see the project requirements, which we've just gone over. Now, the way that I go through planning my page is working in an inside-out manner. So what I mean by this is I list all of my application requirements, and then for each one of these requirements, step 1, 2, and 3 here, I link these to particular components or elements that I think I will need to meet this requirement. And then once I've listed out all of the elements on the page, I will then think about the overall container or the overall page which I want these elements to live within. And then from that, I'm able to plan out how I want to start importing information from Canvas. So let me go through this. So the first application requirement on this seller side is the ability for a seller to update their store information. So that might be their About Us information, or this is the information that a buyer sees when they view a seller's store page. Now, what I want to think about now is what are the components required in terms of Bubble components to support this? And what a seller needs to be able to do is they need to update the About Us information in some kind of dialog or an input box. So they need an input box for About Us information. And these input boxes usually live in some kind of form. So a seller is actually going to be updating a form which allows them to update their store information. So the component I want here is a form. The next requirement is for sellers having the ability to list new products. So the way I'm going to approach this requirement is I'm first going to latch onto that word product. So what kind of information do we need to capture about a product? So the way I'm going to think about this is if I'm a buyer on the platform, what information do I want to see about a product listing on the platform so that I'm inclined to purchase it and I know everything I need to know about that product? And then I'll be able to figure out what kind of information a seller needs to upload. and just say the product is a mobile phone, for example. What kind of information do I want to capture? The first piece of information would be the product title. So what is the name of this phone? Is it an iPhone, for example? I want to know further details about this product, so some kind of description. I also want to know the price of the product. I'd like to know if there's a size or a variant information, so different colors, for example. And I also want to be able to see photos of this product. So I want the ability to see multiple photos, so different angles of the product, not just one. So now to take it another step, what I can see here is that a seller needs to input 5 different pieces of information. So we need 5 input boxes. Then we need a container to store these input boxes. And that container is likely going to be some kind of form element. So a form with 5 input boxes where a seller can add and save this information to list a new product. Now, moving on to the last requirement, sellers need to have the ability to manage existing products. So let's break this down and think about it. So if I'm a seller and I want to be able to manage my existing products, I need to be able to see what products I've already have uploaded to the platform. So I need some kind of table or a repeating group which has a list of existing products. I then need to be able to edit each of these individual products. And I don't want to do double work. So what I mean by this is in step 2 here, or the second requirement, I can see I've already requested or required that I need a form which allows me to list new products. So what I can do here is I can actually utilize the form in step 2 to allow me to edit the products that I already have listed on my platform. So I'm going to write here, use form in step 2. What I've done now is reformat the information on this page to really highlight the inside out methodology that I'm following here. And when I mean inside out is starting with the information required and then working outwards in terms of going to the element, then the block. And then once we've decided on all the blocks here, we're going to figure out what kind of page to hold this block information. So now that we have all these requirements built out and we know what this is going to kind of look like on our page, the next step we need to think about is how do we want our page overall actually to look? So how do we want to store this information? And when I think about this page this is really a seller portal page. So when a seller signs up, they're redirected to a portal where they can add all of this information. And that page is going to have all 3 of these requirements met here by showing these 3 kind of form blocks and data tables, which will allow them to edit and add all of this information. So at the page level, we're going to require a seller portal. The next step is to link each of these blocks and the information we required to Canvas elements that we can add to our Bubble application. So to scroll back up to the top, we've got the first requirement. So sellers have to be able to update their store information, capture that about us information, and they will do so in a block, which is a form. So I'm going to jump over to this tab, which is the Canvas library. So it's a list of all the components that you can add to your application off Canvas, and we can search through this list or filter through this list really easily. And what I want to look for now is a form, which allows me to input that information. If I scroll through here, I can see that there are a variety of forms. And there are 2 standard form inputs. So one's as a pop-up, one is as an input group. And I just want to look at both of them to see if they meet my application use case. And looking at this, it does seem to meet my application use case. So this description element is a multi-line input, and a seller can add in their about us information here. The question becomes, do I want to have this as a pop-up or as a group? In this particular case, I want to add this information as a group. So I'll go back to here, I'll click on this one, and I'll just copy that for my reference. And I'll pop it there. So just to highlight that information of, do I want it to be as a pop-up or as a group? That is a little bit more of a personal choice, and it becomes easier to understand in our next video when we go through the workflows, because it just affects the way in which we send information. So do we want to send information through the URL parameter, or do we want to send information by displaying that information in a pop-up? So it gets a little bit more nuanced, but it'll be more clear in our next video. Going to the second requirement here, where sellers can list new products, the block we require is a form, and this is the type of information we require. So if I go back to this page and I will just go search for form again, and I'll get these 5 coming up. If I pop back over to my pop-up, this pop-up no longer meets my use case. And the reason why is, if I go to my information required, I need to be able to capture multiple photos, and I can only upload 1 image here. So I can't actually use this. Let's look at the advanced form, group, and pop-up. In this one, I have a multi-line input for the description. I have an input label where I can add the product title, and I can duplicate this to add the price information or the size or variant information. I have the ability to upload multiple images, which is really useful for me as well. The question now becomes, do I want to do this via a group or a pop-up? In this case, I am going to choose to show this information via a pop-up. Again, this will be more clear why in our next video. So I'll paste this one here for my reference. Now for requirement 3, I want to have sellers having the ability to manage their existing products. We need a block which is a data table or a repeating group. For the form, we're going to use the exact same form in step 2, so we're not going to worry about that for the moment here. I'm going to go back to here and I'm going to search for data table, and I can see 4 coming up. Let's just go to the standard data table and see if that meets my application use case. So I can see multiple things going on here. There is the ability to sort and filter the data table, which is really useful for me. So if I need to find a particular product that I want to edit, I can see here there is a new button. So I could actually link this button to the pop-up and allow me to add new products really easily. If I click on this here, I can see I have the ability to edit and delete products, which is an important use case for me. In addition, there's 4 fields here, so I could edit these to be the product name, to have the product price, and any other information I wish to display that is of reference to me. So I'm going to choose the standard data table, and I'm just going to add this here for my reference. The final element that I want to look for is the page level itself, where all these canvas elements are going to be sitting under. And the page I want is some kind of seller portal. So if I go back to here and I search for a seller portal, I can see these 3 coming up. So let's just look at this standard portal and dashboard page and see if it meets what I want it to do. So it already has a header, which I really like, and there's multiple tabs that I can click, and I can see this URL changes. So that's useful for me if I want to display different components on the page. In this dashboard, I can update each of these little tabs. So I could have the profile information or the About Us update in one tab and the product listings in another tab. So I quite like the way that this looks. So I'm going to click on this one. I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to add this here. Now that I've completed planning and setting up the page with all of the canvas elements that I require, the next step here is to go to the editor and actually add those elements from the canvas library. So if I jump over to my bubble editor tab here, and I will just overlay the canvas Chrome extension here. The first thing that I need to add is the page. So I need the page in which I can place all of those block elements within. So I'll go to pages, and what I will do now is I will just grab the name of this page that I've already decided on. So it's called a standard portal and a dashboard page. So I'll copy that, I'll go to here, I'll paste that in, and I can see it here. I'll click add page, and I'll just name it seller portal, and I'll click create new page. All right, so this information has now been added to my application. So I have this new seller portal page created. I'll go back to my project requirements, and I'll just highlight this one as green so that I know it's been added. Now I can start adding the specific blocks and canvas elements within this to my page. So the first one I want to add is this form group that I chose earlier. So I'll go to here. I'll copy this one. Now I'll go to the blocks action here. I'll paste in this one, and this is the one I want. It'll automatically be added to the group main content, which is where I want it to be added, and I'll click add here. All right, so I can see that this information has been created on my page. If I just click reveal in the elements tree, I can see that it's been pasted under group main content. Now we'll go back to the project requirements, and I'll highlight this one as green as it's been completed. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to skip requirement 2 for the moment, and I'm going to jump down to requirement 3 because I want to create that data table first. So I'll copy this one and I'll paste this here. I will just copy this, jump back to here, and paste this one in. So again, I want to add to group main content, and I'll click add. Alrighty, so this information has been added to my page below the group which was already added, and I can see it here. I'll jump back to my project requirements, and I just want to highlight this as green for my reference to know that I've added it in. Next, I want to set up requirement 2, this one. So let me search for this one as well. And let me copy this. Now, this one's a little bit confusing because it becomes a bit of a question of where are we going to actually implement and place this new pop-up within. As before, we could add it on this page, but the problem is when we click the edit delete drop down in this repeating group, so to jog your memory, if I go to here and I click full page, there is an edit and delete button, and when we click edit, we want to view that advanced pop-up so that we can edit the product information. And we also want this new button to open that pop-up so that we can create a new product. Now, the way that this works is this works in something called a menu focus group reusable, and I'm actually going to go into more detail as to what this is in our next video. But basically, this doesn't sit on the same page that this entire standard data table sits within. So we have a bit of a problem as to where we want this pop-up to sit, as we don't want to duplicate it on the seller portal page and then duplicate it within this reusable page. So let me jump back to the editor tab here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to here, I'm going to click on this called menu focus template, and I'm going to click edit element. This has a pop-up already existing, which is a standard pop-up, which is pop-up add or edit thing. We're going to add our pop-up to here. I'm going to click add. So that advanced pop-up has now been added to our page. Again, I understand it may not be very clear as to why we've created this advanced pop-up within this menu focus template reusable, but it will become more clear in our next video when we start adding all the workflows, and we can see how this saves us a bit of time and reduces the duplication of pop-ups. What I want to do now is I want to jump back to our seller portal, and I just want to preview the page to show you everything that we've completed so far. So on our page, we can see that dashboard page has already been created with all of these tabs on the side. Right now, clicking these don't make any changes in the visual elements yet. We can see this group that we've added where we're going to actually edit this information in our next video so that it captures the seller's about us information. And then going down, we can see this data table, which is going to ultimately show the product information. And we can see the ability to edit and delete. And we also have a new button, which is going to help us to create new products. Alrighty, so that brings us to the end of this particular video. I hope from this video you really got a better and more thorough understanding of how we go from that planning process of having an application requirement, thinking about the information required that we need to capture, and then the elements and blocks that we want to choose from that. Ultimately, this helps us to link to the Canvas library, and then we can pull the information really quickly and easily from this library into our Bubble editor. And that saves me time because I don't need to actually design each of the components by adding input boxes, by adding buttons, and it helps me go to market ultimately faster. Now, our next video is going to be going into the workflows behind the visual elements. So how do we actually create and edit that pop-up to add new products or to edit new products? How do we edit the data table, and how do we capture the seller about us information? Now, again, if you have any questions about this videos or any queries, please feel free to leave a comment below or ask a question on us at the Canvas forum.